Welcome back to another spill drop video. Today is a return to form as we explore 5 super modules for your next Rust farm base. In addition to these 5 super modules that I've got planned out for you today, there's a number of tricks and techniques that I have been experimenting with and developing that I'll sprinkle in as we go. So if there's something that you see that you want more clarity on, just let me know down in the comments and I'll put something together for you that's a little bit more specific. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who's been watching the videos on the Spill Drop and Spill Drop Adventure channels. Let's go ahead and jump straight into the first super module of the day. Now this super module may look a little bit familiar to some of you who have seen my past videos and specifically my farm related super modules. This is a super high density 1x1 farm. Now I've made a slight variation to this design. You'll notice we can walk straight up and into this module, and that's because I have this planter sitting on a floor frame. You can see that right there. There is a floor grill underneath this planter box that allows it to sit a little bit lower. In this super module, we have 9 floating bamboo shelves, a total of 36 planter pots to keep everything wet and illuminated. We have 2 sprinklers in here and 1 overhead light, and then a standard square planter box down below that you can use for cloning or for growing pumpkins, which won't fit in these smaller pots. My high yield, low profile farm super module. If you decide to build this out for yourself, I always appreciate a good screenshot or letting me know which server you're building it out on so I can come and check it out. But moving on to our next little feature here, and something that I found interesting when I was experimenting with some deployables here, and that is the use of these siren lights to create floating shelves for your planter pots. A common obstacle in Rust-based design is navigating around this single wide door frame. This building component is pretty essential in many base designs and is a great door frame for adding additional security to your base. However, anything that blocks this doorway or juts out into the opening will impede traffic, and as such you're kind of limited to what you can place around this door. The frame of the door is just a little too high to allow for a shelf with any planter pots on it. However, if you use these siren lights, you can place those all around this door and create a very unique place to keep your extra planter pots. And keep in mind, these siren lights are a little bit more expensive than a shelf would be, so you may need to weigh your options, but this might be a good reason not to throw away or recycle these siren lights. Moving on to our second super module of the day, we have the low profile hallway farm module. And one thing about farmers is we hate wasting space. However, we also tend to have objects that really obstruct the flow of movement through a base. So this module is sort of a compromise, allowing you to have a little bit of extra planting going on, a little bit of storage, and a really nice pathway. Now in this module we have 1 single row planter box down below. We have 4 planter pots, 2 of the wall cabinets from the Decor DLC, an overhead light, and a sprinkler. One great feature of this module is that each of these wall cabinets has the same storage capacity of a small box, which is really great for storing seeds or clones in a place that's going to be a little bit out of the way, but not completely unreachable for the places where you might need those. Additionally, there are slots on top of these wall cabinets for storage adapters, so you can incorporate these into automation if you've got that in your base. For our third super module of the day, we have another 1x1 high density farm, and this one's pretty interesting as well. Definitely not low profile by any stretch of the imagination. but you can see that down below this floor frame and this floor grill, we have a square planter box and 4 small planters on that floating shelf back there. You can reach those to plant them and to harvest them, but it is a little bit tricky. The harvesting I typically recommend doing from up here. If you place your pots like I've done here, and you get them down on that floor grill, you can actually walk up on top of them through this gap in the middle pretty nicely. And anything that grows up from the ground level, you should be able to harvest from up here without any difficulty. You can also see we've got pots all the way around here on these shelves and pots along here as well. There's a total of 32 small planter pots in this 1x1, 4 floating shelves, 1 large planter box, 1 light that you see up there, and 2 sprinklers. Not to mention the 2 floor grills that I've got. And if you find that you have trouble getting on top of these planter pots and you just got a regular floor up here, you may need to reconsider and try using the floor grill. As you can see, there's a little bit of extra space that's provided with the use of this grill, and that might be what it takes to get you the ability to walk around up here. Moving on to our 4th super module of the day, we have the L-shaped hallway farm. And this one is a little bit more dense than what we've seen in the past, and I've sort of deviated from using the very slim single planter and switched up for the bathtub planter, which I almost never use because it has kind of an atrocious hitbox and it's pretty big. It also only holds 3 plants, so for the same amount of size that you could fit like 8 of these small planters in, you just get 3 plants out of it. So it's kind of a gamble. It really depends on what you're trying to grow. If you're growing the pumpkins, for example, then it's not a bad idea to use this guy, but honestly, I would typically recommend using one of the skinny planter boxes instead. But there definitely are some cases where this is a good choice, especially if you can't find any of the materials or the blueprint for the skinny guy. You can always just craft this dude if you've already got the DLC. On the wall here, you can see that we have 16 planter pots, 4 floating bamboo shelves, the light fixture, the sprinkler, and one thing that you can do here is you can attach that light to the sprinkler itself, like hanging it off of the sprinkler, but you may notice that can impact how much light some of the plants up here get. Earlier, these plants were getting just 70% light, which I don't really know why that's changed, but it seems to kind of fluctuate, so keep that in mind. I've also got 2 more plants down here that are just kind of tucked into the corner because there was a little bit of extra space for that. But you can kind of reorient this however you need it to work so that you can create this L-shaped hallway and still get some planting done. For the final farm super module of the day, the Minecart module. And these are another planter DLC item that I almost never use and really struggle to find a placement for, but I kind of dig the way that they look, and so I wanted to give them a chance in these super modules. So if you have these and you're trying to find a way to use them, this might be the way to do it. You can see in the back there we have one of the half-high bamboo shelves. We have some floating bamboo shelves on the wall behind it, 1 floating bamboo shelf on either wall to the sides here, 4 planter pots on each of the floating shelves, and then 19 planter pots total just on this half-high bamboo shelf. And with the planter pots on the walls, that brings us to 35 planters in total for this module. And then of course these 2 minecart planters along the sides. We have 2 sprinklers and an overhead light providing water and light for the full module. I will say this module can be a little bit difficult to navigate, and it can be tough to get the plants on that shelf there that you see right below the top shelf of the bamboo half shelf. The best way to plant those is actually from right about here. You can kind of reach those pots to plant stuff in them. It'll be a little hard to check what status they're in, but once they get to a certain point where you can harvest them, you can do so from just above this shelf. Otherwise, you can kind of somehow hop up here and even up on top of these pots. It's kind of a tricky parkour combination to do so, but it is somewhat possible. And if you're wondering about how you get 4 planter pots on one of these shelves, what I'd recommend is trying out these builds on a build server and focusing primarily on these side shelves first. So you want to get these placed as close to the wall frame as you can while still allowing for a good bit of overhang for this pot. You want it to be as close to the halfway point of this pot that you can go in order to provide the most amount of space on this shelf. Sometimes it makes sense to start with the innermost end pot there instead of this one here on the outer edge, but however it works for you, I recommend just kind of playing around to find your rhythm. Once you get the ones in the side placed, then you can do the ones on the back wall and of course on the bamboo shelf. Sometimes a good idea to start low and work your way up. And I know that I said I only had 5 super modules for you today, and that's kind of true because I only have 5 farm super modules for you. But I do have one more regular super module for you down here. You'll notice behind this ladder hatch, we have 2 large batteries. This is a pretty common orientation for one of my builds. You kind of push their little faces up against each other and they overlap kind of nicely. And these 2 batteries provide up to 200 rust watts per minute of output. So you're looking at 20 turrets. You know, not crazy, not bad. They take up about a half of a 1x1 thereabouts, maybe like a third of a 1x1, but you're going to be kind of limited in what you can fit in here. And if you try to fit much more in this space, navigation is going to be very, very challenging. However, this is my latest and greatest monstrosity. On this shelf, there are 8 medium batteries. Now the medium batteries output a maximum of 50 rust watts per minute each, meaning 2 of these medium batteries provides the same output as 1 of those large batteries. The storage capacity of these medium batteries is much smaller, less than half of the large batteries, but the output compared to the amount of space that is required is just different enough that you can make this super battery. So those of you with quick maths probably know that if you've got 8 medium batteries outputting 50 rust watts per minute each, that is 400 rust watts per minute in the same amount of space as 2 large batteries, which were able to output only 200 rust watts per minute. So double the output capacity. In terms of storage, the large batteries can store 24,000 rust watts total for each large battery. So the 2 of those in that other module behind me are storing up to 48,000 rust watts. Now when you compare to these medium batteries, each of these medium batteries can store up to 9,000 rust watts. So these 8 medium batteries altogether can store 72,000 rust watts, making this the best bang for your buck in terms of battery storage that's currently available in Rust. So if you're looking for the best battery, this is it right here. I'm probably going to do a little tutorial for how to build this because it is a pretty massive pain in the neck. Once you kind of figured out the placement for all of these, this becomes a very, very cool way to consolidate the power in your base or create a really powerful battery bank that you can use to distribute power to all of the outbuildings in your compound. Now, I know many of you are probably wondering when I'm going to make a proper video exploring the use of these water wheels. All of the servers that I build on are a little bit behind the times when it comes to new developments in Rust. So these water wheels are just non-functional on the server that I'm currently working on, but I have kind of built out some concepts here to experiment with the placement of these water wheels in a couple of different ways. My primary goal is to see what the most compact layout for these water wheels is by pushing them as far towards that back wall as possible and then changing the orientation of each wheel. So this first module here is by far the least compact. We'll fly over here so you can see what we're looking at. We have both of these wheels with the actual gearbox facing towards the wall. And these are placed as close as I could get them. With the soft side wall facing out, all the tricks to try to get these as close as possible. And I couldn't even put a door frame in here. That's how close these are to this foundation. Over here, I flipped them around the other way so the gearbox is facing towards the foundation, and as you can see, I had a good amount of room to put my wall frame in here. They're in there real close, as you can see, and there's not a whole lot of extra room down there, but it's not too bad. And for this orientation, I turned the gearboxes away from each other, so there's kind of a super hamster wheel going on in the middle there, and you can see that it's up pretty close to this foundation. There's kind of a decent gap between the two, but it doesn't create a lot of extra space to navigate around in here, so probably not the way that I would do this. And then the last orientation, I put the gearboxes both facing in. So this gearbox is facing the outer foundation, this gearbox is facing the outer wall. And as you can see, there's actually kind of a little bit of space there. That's not too bad. This one's real snug against the wall. And this is probably the way that I would most likely recommend folks lay out their water wheels, because this way you can also pretty easily access the power nodes on both of these. It can be a little bit tricky picking between the two, but they're both pretty close by here, so it gives you a little bit more access. And if you don't have this raised foundation, then you can even get in there and run on this inner water wheel with no trouble. I've also found that using these prison cell walls doesn't seem to impact the water flow at all, and you can do a honeycomb type thing on the end to provide a little bit of extra security so that no one's coming in and breaking your water wheels. But that is all that I have for you today. 5 farm super modules and 1 extra super battery module. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. It means so much to me and it helps other people discover these videos. If you are watching this on your phone or on a tablet or whatever, sometimes you'll even get the option to hype the video right down there by the comments section. That is completely free and it just boosts this video in the algorithm. So it helps a lot and it's a pretty easy way for you to support the channel. If you have any questions or recommendations, leave those down in the comments section. If you're new here and you want to see more, consider subscribing. And otherwise, this has been your friend Spilldrop with another Super Modules showcase. And I will catch you in the next one.